Welcome back to The Circle, the podcast where we go all in on men's work, embodiment practices, and personal growth from our queer perspective. If you're enjoying the show, please be sure to share your favorite episode, leave a review, and subscribe. And if you have a question about anything you've heard us talk about, send us a message. We'd love to hear from you. And now on to the show. In today's episode, we're exploring something that seems simple on the surface, but is deeply layered underneath. The act of receiving, whether that's a compliment, a gift, or a moment of intimacy. Many of us struggle to take it all in. Why is that? And what comes alive when we simply allow ourselves to fully receive? Tim, are you ready to go all in?
I am.
Let's do this then. So I'm curious, when you think about the act of receiving, whether that is receiving love, support, a gift, a compliment, what comes alive inside of you? Is it ease? Is it resistance? Is it something else?
Well, the first thing that pops into my mind is this adage that I heard a lot when I was a kid, which is it's better to give than to receive. And I think there's some beauty in that idea. And I have 100% experienced the joy of giving. Oh, I thought of you. This is meaningful to me, and I want to share this with you, or I want you to have this, or whether it's time or a gift or a compliment. But in that, there was never really any education around the value of receiving, how to do it skillfully, how to do it gracefully, why it might be important. So the idea that it's better to give than to receive from my Irish Catholic upbringing was all about being polite and appropriate and sort of adhering to non-optional social constructs and it didn't at all talk about self-care. So when I think about receiving, I think, we probably have a really hard time doing it because we have this idea that it's better to give than to receive. Inherent in it is like, one of these things is better than the other, right? And so we haven't valued receiving, especially, and we haven't created a context around doing it skillfully. And so I think we have a lot of confusion around it, and therefore we have trouble doing it. And now men's work has started a conversation within me about the value of receiving and what it can do. And just really interestingly, in the Kabbalistic tradition, as I understand it, they have a really important. There's a lot of importance on sharing. Sharing is like a really big practice, and of course, sharing can be objects and things. It can be time. It can be effort. It can be talent. Any number of things. And one of the teachings is, sometimes receiving is the gift because you're giving the opportunity for them to give. And it started this reframing of what it means to receive and how it can be a powerful, active act.
Absolutely. I love that because as a person that does tend to be more comfortable with giving, right, there is a something inside of me that is fulfilled when I am fully able to give to somebody and they are fully able to receive. I think about Tuesday night soups. After Embodiment Circle, it fills me up so much to be able to give that as an offering to the men that come over after the Embodiment Circle. And I want nothing from them except for them to receive. Mm-hmm. I just want them to receive my offering. And that fills me up so much. But what I notice in many of the men that come over is this kind of what you were talking about, this almost like shame or worthlessness that if they can't show up with something, if they can't bring bread or soda or cookies, then they really doubt that they can be there. They're like, I didn't bring anything. I can't show up. And it's like, no. Like your presence is a gift.
Well, that's the radical thing that you're referring to. The idea that your beingness can be enough, and the cultural context is that we sort of have to earn our place at every table, and so I think this work is starting to dismantle that because there are other ways of evening things out, right? So it doesn't have to be you're giving me soup, I have to give you something right now, right? There are like broader ways that sort of, I would think, honor the humanity of our connections. maybe one day you pay for the whole dinner. And I don't have to give you anything in that moment because it's enough. But chances are, a week from now, a month from now, I'm doing a similar thing, but it's not because I feel like I have to, but because, we each have a mutually beneficial relationship where we want to both give and receive because there's value in both.
Mm-hmm. You said something about like kind of this obligation when it comes to just receiving, right? Like, sometimes when somebody is given something, it's like, oh, are there strings attached? Oh, are you expecting something for me in return? Like, is this truly freely given?
Mhm.
So in my case with soup, I am freely giving it. I do not expect somebody to pay the bill for dinner in a month. If they do, great, cool. Like, I love that. That is not my expectation. That's not what I'm signing up to do. But like, there is a lot of that comes with receiving. That it's like, oh, does this have an obligation connected with it?
Yeah.
Is there an expectation? Like, if I don't say thank you appropriately, are you going to hold that against me?
Yeah.
Right? And all these things that can come with that part of receiving. So what do you think about that?
Well, I definitely think that I've had the personal experience of having a hard time receiving because I wasn't sure if there were strings attached. Now, when I was younger, there would often be strings attached, and there would also be this sort of understanding of, even if I told you it was freely given, some part of you should have known that you can't receive without having to pay it back at some point, which is like a power dynamic. But I think we need to create a culture in which, am I actually giving this freely because I want you to have it or because I want to give it to you? Is very different than, we're doing like a tally of whose turn is it to give because we need to keep it sort of roughly even the whole time. I just don't think that's how, that doesn't feel like authentically human to me.
Right. But in receipts culture, when everyone is holding receipts against each other, right, that does happen, right? It's like, well, I did this for you. Why aren't you doing this for me in return? And it's like, well, was that clearly communicated? Was that an agreement that we made? Oh, no, that was a silent like expectation. And now I'm on the receiving end of that. Like, shit.
Right. And when we're able to give without agenda, it really, I think it allows us a different kind of experience, as opposed to I'm giving, but I'm trying to create something, whether it's you being indebted to me, some sort of obligation of some sort. And when you're able to give without that, I think it's a more pleasant, more powerful experience. But again, we have to create, and it doesn't surprise me either that like there are moments when, I would love for this person to reciprocate. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I think there needs to be awareness around it.
Right. And clear communication around it. One of the practices that I've been doing to help myself with the alleviation of putting expectations on others is when I give something and I truly do not want anything in return, I kiss it and I say goodbye to it. So if it's a physical item, I will kiss it, say goodbye to it, and like just send it off.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that way it's like, I'm not attached to this thing anymore. I truly just want this person to have it.
Mm.
There are moments though that like in my life that I catch myself of like, oh, I gave this person a compliment. Oh, and my ego wants a compliment in return. Right. And I catch myself all the time with that, like that hidden, quiet expectation. And so the work becomes, can I communicate that? So if I'm in a giving mode and I also want something returned, can I actually articulate that, to that person and put in the request?
Mm. Mm. Yeah, you've been modeling that, and I think it's really admirable. This, I'm going to ask for what I want or tell you what I'm wanting. I think it's a really courageous practice. There was this Instagram meme, but when someone tells you that they like something, I really like that TV show. I really like, it's a real act of courage because I'm gonna share with you a part of me, right? And I think part of the reason why we maybe don't ask people for what we want, or tell them, what we want, is that fear. The ability to ask for what we want is courageous because it's also really vulnerable. There's like a recognition of, I'm going to let you know that I have this desire or this need or this, and you may or may not be able to meet me there. It's a really like vulnerable, courageous act. And so I think it's scary. Oh, I want you to know that I want more time with you. I want you to know that I'd like to make out with you. I want you to know that I want to go to this thing with you, whatever, and you're like, oh, I'm putting myself out there, and then you may or may not meet me in that.
Exactly. And I think there's the monitoring of expectation as well on that side. So both on the giving and the receiving side. So I'm giving information and I'm hoping to receive in return, right? I'm telling you, I like this thing, right? Would you be willing to do this with me or give me this, right? And so in that case, I'm going to then be the receptive person. And in that, I have to monitor myself that I don't set an expectation on that person that if they don't choose option A, which is to give me what I want, that I don't hold it against them.
Yeah.
Right. There's an analogy that this actually happened at my last corporate job, and the HR person helping me through the situation was very helpful in creating this analogy for me. So in that case, I had a manager that presented me two options, and little did I know, she wanted me to go with option A, and option B had consequences. And I did not realize that option B had consequences. I thought that she was giving me like full liberty to choose either. And what ended up happening afterwards was that I chose option B and she held it against me. And it did have consequences. And the HR person that I was working with gave me the analogy of, she presented you with two platters essentially that had white sheets over them. You didn't realize that option B had a knife under it, and you chose option B, right? My boss was carrying a knife, so that's the expectation, right? It's a hidden expectation. Oh, on the surface, I'm gonna give you the dignity to choose. You better choose the right one, though.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So on either side, I think like giving or receiving, I think there's a lot of like woven in work to be done around expectations and monitoring that as we work through the practices of giving and receiving.
Yeah, I think expectation is a big part of it, and I think we need to practice allowing ourselves to receive. So that's part of the men sharing circle. When we get reflection back, the idea is that you get to receive this reflection from a man who just heard you sharing. And I know that we have this desire to like fill the space with words. And it becomes a really powerful practice to be like, can I just let you appreciate my share? Or can I just hear your experience of what I just said without being attached to you needing to understand it exactly the way I meant it, or, and that's the beginning, I think, of this practice of that awareness.
I brought that into sharing circle this week. I think I worked with one man who kept trying to like rebut back to a reflection that they were receiving. And I was like, can you just sit there and receive?
Yeah.
Right. And like, just like bringing that little bit of awareness to them. They didn't realize what they were doing. And then they were like, oh, yeah, like it was uncomfortable to just receive the reflection. So now like, let me be aware of that and kind of just like rest back and receive.
It's interesting. I think it's built into the life or process of an artist where, you, in my case, when I would choreograph, create a piece of dance, I can have all these ideas about like what I think it means and why I'm doing it. And I might have a whole story. But then ultimately, when it comes time and you put it up and you're either dancing it or, your dancers are dancing it, then you kind of have to let it all go. And if the person next to me has a totally different story in their head about what this dance was about, then that's what the dance was about for them. And there is there was some sort of practice of like, I can't get upset if you don't realize that this piece was about something specific, because it's whatever it was for you.
Right. And in this case, you're the giver. Like your gift in this case is this piece of art. You're giving art to the world, and then the receiver then gets to interpret it as they will.
Yeah.
And I think we can do that in many ways. It can be a piece of art. It can be a gift. It could be a compliment. Like we are not in control of how that person receives it, but we can do our best to, like you said, kind of like detach from the expectation of like, oh, I want to tell you so badly about like what that high kick actually means.
Totally.
Right?
Well, you just said high kick. I got to tell a story. I went back. So I did my undergrad at NYU for dance, and I went back to watch a concert a few years later. I can't remember exactly when. And I saw this one piece. It was a student concert. So I think they probably had somewhere between 8 to 12 pieces, and there was this one duet with these two girls, and I loved it, and I was laughing and laughing. I'm like, because it looked like to me as I'm watching this and the way that it was lit and what they were doing, I'm like, oh, it feels like they're like kids at a slumber party, like a slightly more adult version of that. And I'm like, oh my God, I just thought this was so great, laughing. And so later, I was getting odd looks in the audience, And so later this other student came up and started asking us questions, and she was really fascinated by our reaction. I'm like, yeah, I thought that was so great. It was like these two girls at a slumber party, like watching TV, scary movies and whatever. And she was like, oh, that's fascinating. And I was like, well, how was it, supposed to be? Like, what was the choreographer hoping? And apparently they were like, it was a very deep, very deep like thing. And they did not love that we were laughing. And I was like, oh, and so when they explained it, I'm like, oh, to be honest with you, I kind of like the funny version better than what you just described. Yeah. But it was, but there was an expectation of like, oh, we're supposed to take this really seriously. And so they did not like my reaction. Whereas I was like, I actually really love this. Yeah. But I'm not loving it the way you want me to love it. You want me to be like, oh, that was really deep about like the, the juxtaposition of the blah, 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 Yeah. And it's like, no, I just thought it was really fun. Right. I just thought it was good.
They had high expectations on their gift. They wanted it to be received in a certain way.
Yeah. They wanted it to be like heady, like downtown modern dance. And I was like, this is really fun.
That's so funny because that happened to me on retreat over the weekend.
Oh yeah,
during Sacred Theater.
Okay,
right? Like you were there. Like you saw.
I was there.
Like you saw. Like I was in a moment of like I thought was doing something serious, and there was laughter like coming out from the audience because they were seeing it a different way.
Yeah,
right. And then like we had a conversation afterwards about it, and I was like, oh, like there were some people that like got my message, and then there were some people that did not. Right, and they got to experience it their way, and like I had a moment that I had to like sit with that and like work through some stuff. And I was like, you know what? I gave a gift.
Yeah.
At that point, I kissed my performance and I said, this is free for the world to take however they want.
I mean, that's the thing about Sacred Theater that I really love is, our teacher Amir will really talk about thinking about it as an offering, not as a performance. And it is very much that. If I think of it like I'm here like offering an expression, and then you are free to receive it in whatever way you do. It's an elevated practice because then, as we just said, you may not receive it the way I'm hoping you do.
Yeah, there were some really beautiful moments. I'm just going to stay on retreat for a second because that was actually the inspiration for the circles that I led this week and also the theme of this podcast around receptivity and receiving. Mm-hmm. It came from my experience on retreat, and the theme that kept popping up for me was receiving, because I'm such a giver, and you can also call it control freak in a lot of ways, so that like as a participant at this retreat, I had a really hard time just receiving. I had a really hard time just sitting back and allowing leadership, facilitators to have the reins and to allow them to give me their gifts. Their gifts of, hey, we've got the schedule, we've got the container, we've got the practices, right? Sit back and receive. Oof, practice. It's a big practice for me because I want to be so involved and I want to like I call it help out, but really the shadowy part is I want to control.
Yeah, and we have I still believe we have a perspective that it is better to be giving, almost as if some expressions of receptivity, I think we sometimes think of as laziness.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, you're just sitting there. You're like, you're not doing anything. And aren't we supposed to be constantly doing something? What are you making? What are you doing? What are you like, what value are you adding? And, in a lot of spiritual personal growth places, they talk about, oh, there is a lot of value in rest, recuperation, stillness, but we don't give it that same importance, and we don't talk about it in that same way. So you're like, oh, am I just lazy? Oh, it's interesting. We're talking about retreat, 2 days after. So you and I will have just done 2 retreats in a row. And on Tuesday, I was exhausted. And I had these plans of like, well, all this stuff I was going to do. And then I just found myself like laying on the couch. And I had the inner narrative of, oh, I'm not being productive right now. I'm lazy. I'm, whatever. And then I had to switch that narrative and say, no, I actually need rest right now. I've been working really hard, and I need to be allowing myself this. I need to receive some downtime. I need to receive some nourishment. But I also had to practice not having a judgment about that. Oh, I should be doing more.
When you give and give and give and give, like at what moment do you receive? And at some point there is like a reception from like, oh, I'm giving and this person is receiving. So now I'm receiving in return because that feels good.
Yeah.
Right? Is that enough though, if it's also tapping into now the physical as well? So like you emotionally might be receiving in return, but like the physical. So like, that moment of like just allowing yourself to rest, to receive nourishment from like the couch, from the television,
Yeah.
from whatever it might be, to say, okay, my cup is empty. And like, I need to fill it up with a little bit of something right now.
I need to fill up my cup.
You had to fill up your cup.
I mean, it's interesting because they talk a lot about that in men's workspaces. People will set their intention. What's your intention for tonight's practice? Oh, it's to fill my cup, to fill my cup. And I think there's something really beautiful about that, because it goes against this idea of, well, I'm supposed to constantly be giving all the time. And more. Like more. So the practice of receptivity, I think, is a powerful one, because I think it really pushes against the cultural expectation. We talk about this in yoga. I say, the yoga practices, but the practice of yoga asana, the postures, that every posture is a combination of effort and grace. Just like everything is yin and yang, right? So the same idea, right? Of like, it isn't all effort or it isn't all grace. It has to be like a combination of that. And remembering to give postures that are more receptive, more grace, more, recuperative, the same importance that we give the ones that are more effortful. But in our culture, you're like, well, it's the full wheel, it's the handstand, it's the split pose, it's the the dancer's pose, big fancy things. And it's like, that's our culture. Be like, look at me, I'm impressive, I'm working hard, like this took a long time, blah blah blah. And we rarely do that same thing for,
I'm giving this pose the most.
Yeah, doing the pose the most is right. And like, and it's I think a very deep practice to say, can I give my Supta Baddha Konasana? And for those of you who don't know, laying on your back, feet together, knees apart, it's a very receptive, relaxing posture. Can I give it the same importance I'm going to give, my full wheel?
Also super vulnerable. Like now we can bring in a little bit of the vulnerability about receiving as well.
Yeah.
Like that is a super vulnerable position. My belly's open, my genitals are open, like physically, my throat is open, right? Like I'm vulnerable in my receptivity.
Yeah.
And so there's also a part of me that has to work through that as well. Like, do I feel safe enough to receive?
Yeah. I think safety is a big thing. And I think the vulnerability, I think it's connected to this sort of misogyny, like the devaluing of like a receptive partner, like specifically like in relationships and in sex, right? And I think it's because like, oh, well, we have a value judgment on vulnerability, which is vulnerability is weakness, right? And we have to kind of rewire that. You know, I said, okay, I don't know why I'm talking a lot about NYU, but there was this friend of mine, I really loved her, named Kirsten. Have I ever mentioned Kirsten? I might have actually. And I remember one time she was talking, I was just overhearing this conversation. They were talking about sex. And she's like, well, why is it always that like the idea is like the guy is like fucking my vagina? She's like, why is it like, and my vagina is being penetrated? Like, why are we always looking at it like that? She's like, what if my vagina is like encompassing your penis? And I was like, oh yeah. And she was
Take
like,
your power, girl.
yeah, well, totally. And I was like, right. And at the very minimum, like that's a interesting reframe, right? To be like, right, why is it always like that vagina is getting fucked? She's like, well, what if that vagina is
feeding,
is like owning you?
Yes.
Yeah. What if it is like devouring you? Right. I loved it. I just love this idea of like, oh, there was a reclamation of power there to be like, I'm not a thing you like pound at.
Yeah.
I'm like an equal member, of like participant in this shared experience. And I love that. I was like, good for you.
I love that. And if we talk about gay sex, right? Like anal sex, like it's very similar, right? Like so many times we see like the stereotype of this dom top who's like I'm gonna wreck that hole, I'm gonna take that hole, right? Like it's like, oh, it's a little cringy.
Well, you just made a face when you gonna wreck that hole.
I'm trying to get into character.
Yeah. Keep going. I'm sorry.
So like it's very similar. Like it's kind of like, oh, I'm giving, so I'm in the power seat, right? And you're receiving, so you're in the submissive seat.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, can we reframe that so that it's actually really powerful to like receive the other way? I don't really know. Like, I feel like there's so many little nuances here that we.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because when I first like was starting to wrap my head around my own sexual engagement, you know, when I was young and like recognizing that I'm gay and like what that means, there was all this prejudice against, you know, bottoming. I remember my friend one time, she was like, well, if you are going to be gay, like be the pitcher, not the catcher, because of this inherent, you know. And so I feared that for a long time, to be like, well, if I bottom, are you going to have this like feeling about me? Or are you going to have this idea, you know? But then I never feel that way with partners I'm with. I'm never like, oh, you are somehow like weaker or less of anything when I'm doing that. But I had a fear that people might think that about me. Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
And this is all from this idea of like, well, this vulnerable or receptive thing, we have an idea about it. And it's so out of balance.
It truly is. I mean, I still struggle with that. I struggle with it. Like, if I am going to bottom, like, it takes me a lot. It takes me a lot to like get into that headset of like, oh, I'm receiving, and it doesn't make me weak.
Yeah.
Right. I'm receiving, and it doesn't make me any less of a man. Right. Like, that narrative still exists. And I think it comes a lot with like, what does it mean to give and to receive in so many aspects of our lives? It could manifest itself in the form of gift giving and gift receiving. It can also be physical, like in the physical acts of giving and receiving.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even have to be penetrative sex. It could be like intimate touch. What does it mean to be the person giving the touch versus receiving the touch? I got a massage yesterday, and it's really hard for me to relax in a massage, to just receive touch. Because part of me is like, I don't feel worthy enough to just receive.
Yeah, I think we need to practice it. I think there's this idea that there's got to be some equalizing, and I don't think that honors our experience. You know, the interesting thing is we have a judgment about what it means to receive or be receptive, and simultaneously we can't ever give if no one. If we are all just like, well, I'm never going to receive because it feels weak. Well, then no one will ever have a chance to give, because you need someone to receive in order to give, whatever the thing is. I could be offering, giving the gift of yoga all I wanted. If no one comes to my class, it's hard for me to give it. I need people to come.
Receive it.
Right. And and this is why, when I was on the retreat, because I'm so often in leadership where I am structure and leading and giving and whatever, it was so powerful to be like, that isn't my job this time. I get to just receive. I get to go where they tell me and engage in the practices as they've created, and I get to have that experience. I get to receive the experience, and I get to open myself up to the possibility of that experience. And there was such value in it.
Did anything come alive inside of you throughout that? Like throughout that experience of not being a facilitator, of just being a participant? You got to receive some nourishment, but along that way, like what came alive?
What do you mean? Like I got a lot of value.
You got a lot of value. Did you immediately drop into just receiving, or were there any moments that there was like a struggle to like step back, to like not be in that leadership mode? Like, how easy was it to just receive?
I think it was pretty easy for me, but I don't know that would have always been true. I think it might have been easy for me now because I have been practicing that. And I think I've had a lot of different things in my life that have reaffirmed the equal importance of both things. So the example I want to use, when I've learned like partner dancing, whether it's like the West Coast swing or, the cha-cha or, whatever. There is, when you're doing that dance, there's a lead and there's a follow, right? So someone is giving the signals and someone is receiving those signals and then, following along. And in order to be a good lead, they often practice following. In order to be a good follow, you often practice leading. So you start, and then you're like, oh, they both exist simultaneously. And so through dance, through men's work, through yoga, I think that I've had these opportunities. So I trusted the container. So I feel like I was able to relax into just be a participant. But I would argue that that's the culmination of years of practice, where previously it might have been, oh, I need to be making decisions here, or busier than I am, or That
was my experience on the second retreat. Was like, oh, like this is my work this weekend.
Yeah,
right. Like, because we were at the same retreat center as we had been when I first facilitated and when I was like helping to run the show, and going back to that place and not being in that, I was like, oh dear.
Yeah,
like there were moments that I had to like fully step away, where I was like, I don't know, like I can't just sit. I've hit my edge. And I need to just back away and like actually go sit with this for a moment.
I feel like I saw you relaxing into just being a participant, though. Did you?
Most of the time,
yeah.
Sometimes, and then there were other times, like fire alarm, where I was like having a really hard time.
Sure. I hear that.
Yeah. So we talked about gift giving, gesture giving, about intimate touch. One of the things that I noticed that was also an inspiration for the circles in this podcast was compliments. I mean, we kind of approached it a little bit. But one of the stories that really kicked off this whole thing for me was I was sitting with a brother on retreat, and we were hanging out during downtime, and I was just going over to him, and I just wanted to offer him a compliment about like how he was showing up. And it was almost instantly that he turned it around back to me. Didn't even take a moment to like acknowledge that I had complimented him. He just like turned it back. He said, and you're also showing up great too. And I had to pause him. I was like, whoa. Like I just gave you a compliment. Like, can you just receive it? Can you just like rest in it for a moment? And he had never realized that's what he was doing. And he's like, I've been doing this most of my life. Like, I just can't receive. And then a couple days later, I said another compliment to him, and he said, thank you. And he had a moment where he's like, did you see what I just did there? And I was like, yes, you just like received. And then he returned a compliment to me. But it was like a really beautiful practice to see somebody actually be able to shift from this almost like icky or unworthy feeling of like, oh, I can't have the attention on me. I can't receive a compliment. I can't like anything. It's like, I'm not worthy of it, or I don't deserve it, or I can't have the spotlight on me. So I instantly have to like push it back. I have to push it back the other way.
Or it in your own mind or in your heart changes the power dynamic, which is what we're trying to chip away at. But this idea of like, well, if you just received a compliment, like, does that feel like a power dynamic for you? And like, oh, am I gonna jump in to even the score? Like, well, we each received a compliment. We each gave one.
So now I don't owe anything.
So no, I don't owe anything, and we're even. We're even in like our understanding of our own power and place.
Ooh, interesting.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So rather than, oh, you just gave me a compliment and I'm just receiving it, it's like a kind of a vulnerable thing.
Right.
And so, that feels vulnerable, I equate vulnerability with weakness. I need to like course correct. You look good too.
Yeah.
Whew. That was a close one.
I took my armor off for a millisecond. That's a really great point, that like, does it open us up to vulnerability to just receive in any capacity? Like, being receptive is vulnerable.
Yeah.
And it could be in receiving a compliment. It could be in receiving a gift. It could be in receiving touch. It could be in receiving an act of service, right? Like, it is a super vulnerable position. And how we respond to that, I think does have a lot to do with this inherent societal misunderstanding of the weakness of vulnerability. And if we can allow ourselves to simply receive, to take it all in, how we might really be able to fill our cups and really nourish ourselves.
How we might be able to show up more fully if we gave it the same importance. I give it the same importance. I give resting the same importance as I give going to the gym. I give moments of quiet the same importance as moments of communication. How much better we might be.
How can we reframe? You started this episode off with the adage of it is better to give than receive. And like, how can we begin to reframe that? How can we come up with a new adage that like, it is just as great to give as it is to receive?
Yeah. I mean, are we going to brainstorm it right now?
It's a challenge for anyone listening, right?
I mean, I think the recognition of, in order for one, there must be both. In order for one, there must be both. Right. So they are equally important. And then I would argue that it really becomes about balance. If you are a person who, a large part of your life, you're just a taker, well, that's probably not super in balance and won't have a lot of longevity. If the same is true, like, oh, I just give and give and give. These are people, we've seen this personality type. I give and I give and I give until I get resentful and burnt out. And then I completely collapse. Well, that's not helping anybody. Or it might be helping individual people that like are fortunate enough to get the one thing or the other thing. But in the long run, it's like, no, that's, and so this honoring of the whole idea and balance, with the Taiji, the yin yang symbol, right? It's white and black with the dots, right? And we could have a judgment about like, oh, well, the dark one is darkness. It's bad. Like, we want to be all light. And no, you're like, no. You absolutely need both. You absolutely need both. Everything has both. And so like that value of like, if in order to give, you must receive.
Yeah. And I think honoring as well of like, how do you receive? Love languages, right? Like, not everyone has the same love language and not everyone receives in the same way. One person might be words of affirmation. One person might be gifts. Somebody might be acts of service and somebody might be quality time, right? Or physical touch. And I think it's in recognizing and honoring how it is that we most receive, right? Because I think we can receive in all the ways, and we can probably practice in receiving, in all the ways we can experience love. Honoring though, like, what is it that fills me up the most? Like, how do I receive love the most? And then being able to have that conversation with our intimate circles to be able to recognize that, like, oh, I may default to being a gift giver, but if that's not how this person receives love, then I'm just giving for my own selfish reasons. I'm not giving freely to support that person.
Well, I think it's a process, right? Because, in the beginning, I suspect, like, well-intended people, and I've done this too, I'm going to give you the thing that I would want. Mm-hmm. It makes a lot of sense, especially if you don't really know someone.
That's what you're familiar with.
Oh, like, I would really, in this moment, I would really want words of affirmation, so I'm going to offer you words of affirmation. But the more we get to know each other, it becomes this elevated practice of, now how is it that they want it or tend to receive most fully? And then practicing that shift, be like, oh, well, I wouldn't want a gift here, but that's what they want. Mm-hmm. That's the way that they're going to appreciate this or value this, right? And so, it's an elevated practice.
It's what's going to, in their receiving, that's what will fill them up the most.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've covered a lot of ground around the topic of receptivity. It's pretty complicated. Like, I started this off by saying, like, on the surface, like, just to receive seems simple enough, but there's a lot of nuanced layers to it. And especially, like, different types of people, different types of receiving. Not everyone receives the same way. Are there expectations involved? Is there obligation? Are things ever truly freely given? Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. And I think we've covered quite a bit of ground.
Yeah, I think we did too. Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I believe it should be a practice. And I think this first step in that practice is becoming aware of moments in your life where you do or could receive, whether that's, can I receive a compliment from a family member or friend? Can I receive some rest and downtime? Can I receive that from myself maybe, right? But just before we can start to really practice it, we have to become aware of it in our life and how little or much there is.
Actually just made me think of one last thing, like another practice, right? Is like just receiving the breath. The gift of breath that's in this world, and the ability of this body to be able to receive it, like just breathing. Mm-hmm. Like, I can receive so much by just breathing. Mm-hmm. So it's also a practice.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well, I feel complete.
As do I.
Will you take us out, please?
I will. Closing down our eyes, just paying attention to the breath. It is with deep appreciation and gratitude for any insights, awarenesses that we may have gained in this sacred space, that we now release the archetypes and the spirits that we called in. And with these words, our container is open but not broken. Aho.
Aho.